EastEnders makes its return to number one in my soap opera rankings for January 2023. After not being in first place for the last 2 months, I believe, it gets back up to that top spot as my best rated soap opera. And that's even despite me having a couple of complaints with a couple of the stories being kind of poorly written. But what EastEnders is doing well that some other soap operas do so terribly of is there's a lot of different kinds of stories going on. And so you might have some bad stories that you don't like, but it's supposed to be a soap opera. You're supposed to have many different stories on. You can find some good stories with some of the other stories, even if you don't like a couple of them. Some other soaps could definitely learn from that because a lot of other soap operas let either certain characters eat the show alive or certain stories take precedent over everything else. And if those stories that are taking precedent aren't good, then you're not going to like the soap as much. So big ups to EastEnders. Still, it's been consistently one of the better soap operas, and certainly the better written soap operas, since the producer change that was so badly needed. Maybe the American soap operas could take note that if you make the right change, the show can be dramatically better. I'm going to talk about the couple of negatives first. The first one was the Phil story with Keeble getting to its poorly done climax. While this story started pretty interesting with somebody wanting to take Phil and his family down after Phil living this life of crime for so long, I didn't really like how the end of the story was written. This was basically Clenshaw, the producer's first big miss since taking over EastEnders. I thought Phil always making these empty death threats. Phil's never really been responsible for killing anyone, even though he's always been the tough guy on the show. I just didn't like it. And of course, Phil gets one over Keeble in the end because Keeble kind of goes off the deep end seeking her revenge. Not a good story. Now, the other story I have some complaints in. It's not necessarily a bad story. It's just getting on my nerves, honestly, because they're doing this not even teen pregnancy story, pre-teen pregnancy story with 12-year-old Lily becoming pregnant. It is another young child, basically, Ricky Jr. being the father of the baby, both of them very young. What has been getting on my nerves with this story is how many of the adults aren't really trying to tell Lily how big the situation is for her, because Lily, for whatever reason, seems to want to keep the baby and give birth to the baby despite being 12 years old, and yet the adults in her life are written as to not tell her how big the situation is. Like she is really making the right choice for her at 12 years old. I don't know. I don't know why they're writing the story the way they are. I don't know if it's supposed to be anti-abortion, which would be weird. There's not like there's some religious aspect to the story, because they're not. It's just the family being stupid. But what the story has also done, it ties it to Jack, who's already been going through hell with his daughter Amy, who has been cutting herself. But now his son Ricky Jr. is going to be a possible young father. Jack's been doing a lot of wrong over the past few months, especially when it comes to his own family, doing a lot of yelling, trying to be a control freak, which is clearly just making his children act out more. I did, however, feel like when Jack was having a conversation with Lily, Jack was the only person trying to get through to Lily the gravity of the situation that she's in, being pregnant at 12 years old. But then, of course, everybody else tries to make Jack the bad guy because this is not his daughter that he's having this conversation with. That was the one time over the past several months that Jack was actually in the right, in my opinion. Somebody actually trying to have the right conversation with Lily. But over on the other side of Jack, things with his own family, which he's continued to be terrible in, trying to be a control freak with Denise, saying these shitty comments to her when she has been nothing, only trying to help his children, but he's making comments that she's not their real mother and all that shit. So I can understand why she's upset with Jack. I can understand why even Amy at times has been very upset with her father and her own acting out. This has been leading to Denise kind of having good conversations with Ravi, possibly teasing a possible affair between Denise and Ravi, even though when Ravi went in for a kiss, Denise pushed him back and said he got the wrong idea. And so Ravi's kind of been flirting it up with her daughter Chelsea in a way to kind of play with Denise, it feels like. But I can't lie, I'm kind of here for Denise and Ravi. It's funny because I talk about this in other soap operas. They do these affair storylines and they're so poorly written where everyone involved looks bad. Where on this side, I could actually see Denise's motivation because Jack's been so bad of a husband over these past several months. And more importantly, Jack continues to constantly lean on his ex for many months now. So it's not like Denise doesn't have reason to at least find a reason to fall for Ravi, I guess. I just like that Denise has a motivation where on another soap opera like General Hospital, it's written with poorer motivations, whereas this possible affair, and it's not even really an affair because Denise isn't really going for it, it at least is written in character with right motivations. And it's classic soap opera. It even involves her daughter Chelsea now kind of being brought into Ravi's little game here. So I like how they've written this story. At first, Jack was getting on my nerves, and he's definitely still getting on my nerves. And maybe you can argue that this is the poor written side of the story, where they have to make Jack be unbearably annoying to give Denise the right motivation to possibly have an affair. But it's still classic soap here, and I'm here for the possible. It would probably be more than a triangle. There's a lot of different pieces involved in this possible love octagon. Other things that have happened, they continue to make Jean and Harvey closer together again. Of course, we have Lola still dying of cancer, being a very depressing story. Lola and Jay do end up getting married, even though on their wedding day she has the health scare and has to go to the hospital. But they do end up getting married. Lola, however, still slowly inching towards her inevitable death in that depressing story. We got a little bit of Niche and Suki and Eve triangle, but not enough for my liking. I want them to get more screen time because I do like that story. Another big story that started the month of January was Zach possibly dealing with an HIV scare because in his past with drugs, he was sharing needles and one of his old friends tested positive for HIV. Zach also ends up testing positive for HIV. So I do like that we're getting a straight HIV story because it's usually only done for gay characters, although in American soap operas it's been done for straight people. But the bigger part of this story is now Whitney's pregnant with Zach's baby, so this could make the baby HIV positive too. I think that's kind of where they're going with that story. Zach has yet to tell Whitney, however, that he's HIV positive, so Zach he's not dealing well with this situation, to say the least. And lastly, Alfie reopens the Vic without Linda knowing while Linda's out of town. This blows up in his face when Linda returns, but it seems as though Linda's going to be selling the Vic, hopefully not to Alfie, although Alfie doesn't have the money, so I don't know how Alfie would come up with the funds to actually buy the Vic. It doesn't seem like we're getting a new family to own the Vic, which is what I would prefer. We've seen in the past new families be a vocal point with who owns the Vic, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening right now. And probably that's for the best. We've had some new characters to other characters' families, so I don't know if we really need a new family at this point, because the show has definitely found its footing again. I think it has been consistently one of the best written soaps for many months now. That's why it ends up back at number one in my rankings.